Good evening, and welcome to today's point. I'm Jake, and tonight we must address a series of extraordinary events unfolding in Washington, events that collectively paint a picture of a nation teetering on a precarious edge. The sweeping changes being implemented by the new administration are not just political shifts. They are fundamental challenges to the very foundation of American governance and our global standing. For weeks, we have witnessed an unprecedented push toward the centralization of executive power, often justified under the guise of necessity or security. Let's look at the facts. First, there is the alarming consideration of declaring a national economic emergency, a concept rarely invoked outside of true global catastrophe. The purpose? To bypass Congress and impose a sweeping unilateral blanket tariff on nearly all imports. This maneuver relies on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, a statute designed to combat hostile foreign states, not to settle a domestic trade debate. An economic crisis manufactured by design, simply to enact a preferred tax policy. Critics warn this manufactured crisis threatens to trigger global trade wars, isolate American consumers, and fundamentally undermine the constitutional balance of power, where Congress, not the executive, is granted the authority to regulate commerce. It is a dangerous manipulation of a presidential power meant for genuine emergencies. Second, the specter of Marshall-like intervention looms over our major cities. The president has repeatedly threatened to invoke a national state of emergency over domestic crime and immigration to justify deploying federal forces, possibly even the military, into urban centers like Washington, D.C. The justification often hinges on disagreements with local democratically elected officials, particularly their stance on immigration enforcement. This is an overt challenge to the principle of local autonomy, using the fear of crime as a pretense for federal overreach and control. Furthermore, the discussion of recalling high-ranking U.S. military commanders from around the world to reassess their global deployment only adds to the sense of an administration preparing to pivot sharply inward, potentially destabilizing key alliances and creating vacuums of power overseas. But perhaps the most profound change is in how our nation views its role in the world. The shift in our military nomenclature speaks volumes. The Department of Defense, the institution that symbolized a post-war commitment to collective security, has officially been directed to revert its supplementary title to the Department of War. A symbolic, yet chilling statement. The head of the department is now, by official decree, the Secretary of War. When the defense of peace is replaced by the pursuit of war, we must all pause and ask, what exactly is the new American mission? The rhetoric suggests a move away from stability toward aggression. This is not merely an internal branding exercise. It sends a deeply concerning message to our allies and adversaries alike, potentially signaling an era of military adventurism that alarms international observers. Compounding this existential drift are the administrative maneuvers. We are currently facing the very real possibility of a government shutdown, not due to a failure to negotiate, but as a deliberate political strategy. The administration has explicitly placed the blame for this potential paralysis on the opposition, on the Democrats, claiming they are the ones who want a shutdown. This cynical blame game obscures the underlying policy conflict, a battle over critical funding for healthcare, education, and social safety nets. Worse still, the White House has issued directives to prepare for mass federal employee layoffs should the shutdown occur, turning the mechanism of government closure into a weapon to force compliance and reshape the civil service by executive fiat. This isn't just about closing national parks. A shutdown of this nature immediately affects everything from food inspections and air traffic control to veteran services and the Social Security benefits upon which millions of Americans rely. The stability of the nation's operations is being leveraged for political gain. These are not isolated incidents. They form a pattern. And this pattern echoes a recent cautionary tale from halfway across the globe. You, the American people, and the entire world are aware of the situation in South Korea last December 3rd. You remember the foolish choice by former Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol to declare martial law, a choice that ultimately led to his current situation in prison. And the American public and people all over the world witnessed the incredible power of the Korean people. President Trump could face the exact same situation as former Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol. That Korean example is a stark reminder that even in the face of executive overreach, the institutions of democracy and the will of the people can prevail. But the American system is being tested now in ways we have not seen for generations. Whether it is by declaring an economic emergency to enforce trade policy, sending federal troops to our streets to enforce political will, or holding the entire federal government hostage through a threatened shutdown, the goal seems consistent: to concentrate power and eliminate dissent. These actions chip away at the checks and balances that define our republic. They are not about making America great. They are about making the executive branch absolute. We stand at a critical crossroads. The decisions made in the coming weeks will determine whether the United States remains a democracy defined by law and process, or one defined by the unchecked will of a single individual. The vigilance of the American people, of Congress, and of our independent judiciary has never been more vital. Thank you for joining us on today's point. Be informed, stay vigilant, and never forget the cost of liberty. Good night.